Welcome to a new video. I am going to show you how to do Svelte. I said to myself that I will try it for about 3 to 5 hours. And if I could create, read, update and delete a user, then I will be sold. I could say after my test I did that I no longer would like to do Angular. I have done some Angular. I don't want to do React. And I don't want to do Vue. Those three libraries frameworks, they are quite good, but Svelte, at least as for now, it is the best I have tried so far. So I want to teach you guys how to do Svelte. By the way, this video is not sponsored by anyone, so this is my personal experience with Svelte in the past 3-5 hours. The first thing you need to know is that you must have Node.js installed in your computers. So just hit nodejs.org, download it and install it. Once you have installed that, we can take over and start creating an Svelte application. Let's go to VS Code and create a whole new folder anywhere you want in your computer. I actually will open a folder, and in my computer I have this Svelte projects folder, and over here we just create my first Svelte 1 folder. You can call this whatever you want. It can be placed anywhere you want in your computer. Just make sure that you open it, and it is empty as for now. Now we need to install some code from Svelte in here. I have seen some tutorials where they do something like npx. I'm not doing that. So in the terminal here, you could install it via this npx thing. But what I want to do is I want to hit to the Svelte website. So I will do Svelte. And this is actually the page that Svelte has. The one that you saw in here was just my presentation for this video tutorial. So in this page, if I go to RepL, I can just click this download button, and over here I will get this compressed folder. I will show this here and I will just open it. I will grab everything that I had inside this downloaded folder. I just copy it, and then I will place this inside my Svelte project, inside the Svelte 1 project. I paste it and I get all the code that I just downloaded from this zip file here. Let me close this, let me close that, and let's check what we have now in VS Code. Right now we have this ready for us. I will close the terminal, and we also need to have some help from the editor, so we can type some Svelte. And I will install the Svelte package here. This Svelte has 5 stars. It's quite okay. It's quite good actually. I will just go and install it so I get all these benefits from the file, right? From this piece of code. Once I have installed it, this extension is enabled globally. Great. I don't need it anymore. So over here, I have some files and I need to build my application, then I need to run it. Let's do that. Open the terminal. You can go and say view terminal, so you can open it and close it. And once you are in the terminal, you can do npm install. The reason you can run npm install is because you have previously installed Node.js in your system. I'm running this, it's downloading some files. Pay attention to the left side here, what happens when I have run the npm install. Yes. Let me, yeah, it's still recording, that's good. Over here I have the node modules. I will not touch this, I don't need it. And I will explain to you what happens once we run this server, this Svelte server that we have built at the moment. npm run dev. When we run this, we can see that The application is running. We can go to the browser and then we can say localhost port 5000. This says hello world. I will place it right there. And what I will see here is I just want to have this on the side like so. So we can have the code here and the output there. So right now the terminal is running fine. Hello world is popping up from the following files. Once we have installed Svelte, we can have the main.js, which says that you will be using the app.svelte, which is this file here, app.svelte, and the index page. Let me take the terminal away. The index page says that it will use bundle.js, which is hooked to the main.js, which is hooked to the app.svelte. Don't worry about the main.js. You will not touch this file. That's fine as it is now. Don't worry about the index.html. You will not touch this file. Leave it exactly as you want it. Well, unless you want to change the title. So here it says here Svelte app. We can change it to my app. As soon as you save it, it will auto reload the browser. So that's the index page. What it is important for us is to look at the app.svelte, which contains this hello world. In Svelte, things work via JavaScript and the HTML elements. We create a variable, we call it name, the value is world, and then we say that we want to have hello, followed by the contents of the variable name. And this is how you type it in Svelte. If you say hello name, you will see hello name. But we have to tell that name is a variable coming from Svelte. Therefore, we say hello name in between curly braces. There we have the hello world now. We don't really need this. It was just to explain to you how this gets combined with Svelte, and there's nothing here. To build the application that I want to have is I would like to be able to create users, and I want to edit and delete the users. Let's go to the src and let's create a new file. Let me call it user app.svelte. I want to call it user app. It has to be capitalized by the way the U, and it has to have the Svelte extension, so Svelte knows how to treat this file. And this user app will have just the add user functionality. Once I have created this user app, we can create the script tags for it. This is working fine because I just installed, remember, Svelte from here. Inside the script tags, I could create a variable. Let me just create a variable to test it. Call it test equals user app here. And I will create an h1 in which I want to display the value of test. Remember that Svelte connects via the curly braces to the variables. So I say curly braces test. I save, and I will not see anything here because this user app is not hooked to the app.svelte. To link this app to the user app, we need to import it. So I will say import user app.svelte. And actually I need to import it in a different way. I need to run this import user app from user app.svelte. I save it. Let me look at the console to see there are no bugs or errors. Everything is running fine. Close the console. And once I have imported the user app.svelte, I have this variable that points to the user app file. So if I want to use the variable, I can just say user app, and then I close the tag. I save it, and then I get the user app here. The way this is hooked is via this variable. This is a pointer to the file. So if I call this user app x, and then I say user app x down there, I still see that the app is here. So you can call this whatever you want. but to maintain the syntax throughout the system, I call it user app. So now that I have the user app here, I'm going to throw some HTML. This is running fine. I don't care about this anymore. I'm going to put here a div with a class container. And I would like to style this div. So here's something that you have to know. Inside these files that we created, we have this bundle file, which contains nothing. That's a CSS file. And then we have the global CSS file. The global CSS will affect all our components. It will affect this component, it will affect that component, or any component throughout the system if we want to style something in it. The bundle CSS is a special CSS file that will only have the specific elements for the components themselves. So if I create here a style, and then I say that the class container is going to have a border 1 pixel solid and black, and then I save it, we can see here we get the class container, and the bundle knows how to relate only to this user app. So if I have this container somewhere else, it will not affect the whole system because this is related only to the user app, to this file here. Let me make this with some spaces so we can better see it. I'm going to do this. This will be the script up here, and then I will have the style, and then I will have the HTML down there. It doesn't affect this at all. I can close this, I can close that, that's fine. Now, you are free to move this around. If you prefer to have the style at the top, you can do that. If you want to have the script in the center, as it is now, you can also do that. And if you want to have the HTML at the bottom, you can do that. You can move these elements around however you like. Now, I prefer to have the style at the top, just like normal HTML. Then I prefer to have the HTML in the center, and I like to have the script at the bottom of my file, like this. It doesn't really matter how you place it. Things still work. So now that I have the user app, over here, I would like to have a form, and this form will have no action. We don't need the action here. It will have an input box. Type text, let's create a placeholder, and it will say username. I save it. We have the username in there. Don't mind the layout. I'm not going to work with the layout too much. And I have a button here that says add user. Save it at the bottom there. The idea is that as soon as I add users from here, let's say A, add user, B, add user, the users will pop up there. And I will be able to delete and edit each specific user. Let me see if it's still recording. Yeah. All right. So now that we have done that, I would like to tell you that the user app will be the central brain for all the users. Therefore, in here, I will create a variable. I will call it users. This variable will be an array, and it will eventually contain all the users. For now, I will hard code a user object having the key ID with the value 1 and the key name with the value A. I will duplicate this user, in which the ID will be 2 and the value will be B. If I save this, I don't see anything here because this variable has not been requested inside the HTML of the page. For the sake of the example, I'm going to always display the users array in here, just before the form. I will do this just by pointing to users, and what we will get here is object, because we cannot really show the contents of an object by pointing to it. Therefore, I need to convert this, stringify, I will stringify users, so we can always see what the users contain. So we have the ID 1 with the name A, ID 2 with the name B. So that's for the users as for now. But when we have to insert something here, a new user, let's say C, and then we click add user, you can see that the page is actually being reloaded, and we do not want that. So now we're going to start using some event handlers from Svelte. We're going to say on submit, and this on submit is going to run a function. The function is going to be inside the Svelte script tags. Therefore, I have to put this in between curly brackets, and then I will call the function add user. Let's create the function down here. Const add user is a function, and this function is going to take an event. I will say event.prevent default. So hopefully it will stop the page from being submitted. It's reloaded. I say C, add user, D, add user. You can see the page doesn't submit again. That's pretty good. That's what we wanted. This button is going to also allow me to submit the form. All right. So now let's check a little bit more this form here. We have the submit, we have the add the user, we have the input box with a placeholder, but now we need to add this value, whatever we write in there, C or D, to the array. So here we need to bind the values. I'm going to say that I want to bind the value that I have inside this text box via the value of the text box. I want to bind it actually to a variable, and the variable is going to be called name. This will be the name for the user. So once this is binded, what I need to do is I want to save that name inside the users array. So to do that, I'm going to go here, and once I have created or run or triggered this function, I'm going to actually push to the users array the new element. So I will say users equals, and you cannot do users.push because Svelte doesn't work like that. You always have to have an equal assignment, so Svelte will react upon that new value. So users equals users, sorry, I need the spread operator, users, and what I want to pass here is the new user. Now the name of the user is already hooked via this name keyword. So what I want to do is I am going to hardcode an ID. For now, I'm just hardcoding the whole thing. The value will be 3, and I want to have the name of the user, which this name is hooked to the name that I have here. But remember that this is a variable, and this variable has not been declared yet. Therefore, I'm going to create a variable with name, which is empty. Now this name can be placed down there. Since the key is called name and the variable is called name with the value of it, I can just say that this will be the name of it. I save it. I will do a C, add user. We can see that the new user has been added. D, add user, the new user has been added. Now this ID is hard coded. So what I want to do is, I don't want this hard coded ID. I will create a variable here, and this will be math., let's do floor, and then I will do math.random times, let's create IDs times 1000. So this ID can be replaced with the ID there. Since this is the same key with the same value as ID, and name is also the key and the value, this is how my object will be represented. Let's do a test. C, D, those are my IDs, and these are my values. Okay, so as for now, I'm adding correctly the element to the array, the elements to the array. Now we need to display them down here. Since each of these elements, this element there, and the element there, and so on, these are users, individual users, I will create a new file and then I will call it useritem.svelte. This user item will represent each of these users. As I did before with the user app, I will copy the whole user app and then I will paste inside the user item, but I don't need any of these. That was just to get the HTML, the script, and the style in place so you can see it again. Each user is not going to have a container. We don't really need this, but we're going to have a class called user. Remember that this user class will only affect my HTML if I style it here, .user. So I will create for the user a background color. The color will be something a little bit light like this. So this is only related to this element here. It doesn't affect the whole system. Since I have the user item here, I want to display all my users inside the user app, which is the controller for everything. To do this, I need to import it. So I will say that the user app is going to import user item. That will be the name of it. Remember, you can call it whatever you want. And we're going to import it from the user item.svelte. We save it, check the console, still no errors, that's fine. Now that I have imported the user.svelte, nothing is displayed here because I want to display each of these users that are in my array right here in the page. To do that, I have this form where I can add the user and I will create a new div. I will give it an ID of users and this is unique. All my users will appear here. I'm not going to style it for now. And what I want to do is I want to display each of the users that I have in my array. To do that, Svelte has a function called each. You open it like this and then you close it just by putting the / each in front of it. So this is going to be an each loop and then I will point to the variable users. For each users, I will grab this as a user. And for now, what I want to do is I just want to show an h1 saying user. Just that. I have 2 users. If I do C, I have 3 users. If I do D, I have 4 users. So this is how the each works. Now, I don't need to create an h1 for each user. I actually want to show each of these user items in here. So now I will say user here. So we can see that will be the user. If I want to show each of the user items, remember that I have the user item variable here. So I will say user item and then I close it. If I do that, I have 2 users. This user item calls this file one time and calls that file another time. Now we want to pass the name of the user and the ID of the user to the user item. This user item is a user. So this will have a variable. We will call it let user, and that will be a variable that is actually an object. You will have an ID. The ID of this user is unknown to us. I will just say that's a 0. And the user has a name. The name is also unknown to us. It will be empty. This ID and this name will come from the user app Svelte. It will actually come from this array of elements. If this user item expects to get some data from a different component, you must do an export in front of the variable. That means that somebody, some component, will pass data to this variable here, let user. So now that we know that, the user app component is actually going to call the user item, and it will pass a variable to that user. In this case, we want to pass the user object. This could be anything. If you get it as access, you will pass user access. But we call it just user. We save it. User here, user there. Now this user has been called, and now this user could have, let's do an ID. Let's put this inside and span diff ID, and the ID that we want to point to is coming from the variable called user.id, and I have to say the user.id because we pass the user object, which contains an ID and contains a name. We passed that to the user item. I'm going to duplicate this line, and I'm going to point to the name, and the name will be the user.name. I save it. I have the ID 1, name A, ID 2, name B. If I add C, I get C. If I add D, I get D. So that's making some sense. It's working fine. Now let me just check quickly here what we need to do next. We will need to actually delete the user. Let's do that. Let's create a button, and just to have a little bit of fun, let's go to Emojipedia, and let me get the delete trash, if there's something called trash waste basket. I will copy this. I'm going to place it right in there. Okay, so I save it. Now we have the delete, so I can delete each of these elements. When I click on this button, I want to delete the element. Let me do that like so. All right, so I'm going to have an event listener on column click. Remember, this is Svelte syntax. Usually JavaScript is just on click, but this is Svelte, so we do on column click, and we're going to call a function. You don't really need to do this double quoted. You can just do that like so. It's up to you how you do it. Now, when we delete a user, we actually want to pass the user up to the array of users so we can delete it from there. And that's what we need to get to do that. To do that, we're going from the user app to the user app. User app is the main brain for the users. So somehow we need to pass data between the user item and the user app. These are the only two weird lines of code that took me a little bit of time to understand, but I will show you how you do that. The syntax says import create event dispatcher, and this is going to be an Svelte variable. So I do curly braces, and we're going to import this from the main Svelte application. And I'm going to create a variable called dispatch. You can call this whatever you guys want. You can call it trigger, emitter, anything you want. And this dispatch will equals the create event dispatcher. Now, this was weird the first time I saw these two lines, but then I realized that this is used to pass data to upper components. Let me put this as a comment right like this. Okay, so this is used to pass data to upper components. This is what you need, and those are the only two weird lines that after you have used it a couple of times, you will actually understand it. Now, going back to the onClick event, when I click on it, I would like to call the function, let's call it delete user. That's the function I want to trigger. I want to call. Do I have this function? No, I need to build it. So over here, we'll create a variable, delete user. That's actually a function. And this function will be in charge of deleting the user. Let me see how I did this. Before I'm thinking how I deleted it. Well, yes, Basically, when I call the lead user, I need to call my dispatcher, and I want to dispatch an event. Call it whatever you want. I will call it the lead user, same name as before, and that will be about it. Let me just test it. So when I pass this, the lead user, I have to go here, and in this import user item, I want to listen to that event and say on the lead user. So if you call this emitter the lead user, you are going to listen to it via the same exact name, the lead user. And once you have it, the lead user will actually call the function, call it again, the lead user. So I'm just having the same function name throughout the whole system. This delete user does not exist. You can see it here, it's not there. So we say const delete user equals a function, and this function will actually just console.log the letter X. Save it. Let's see if I have any bugs here. No bugs so far. I click here. Let's look at the console. I see the letter X. I click there. I see the X. I see the X. So I am here so far. That's fine. And since I want to delete the user, the system will always ask me which user I want to delete. So I have to pass here the user. So I will say I want to delete user. And this user here is the user that I am using at that specific point in time. So if I click on this trash can, the user will be the user, which is all this object. If I click on that trash can, it's going to be all that object. So I'm passing the user. In Svelte, I pass the user via this delete user emitter that's listening, and this delete user calls the function here. Now this is the tricky thing. In here you will get an event, and the event actually has a detail. So if I say console.log e.detail, and then I save it, forget about the X now. I click here, I click there, I don't see anything in the delete user because I didn't save this file. You can see it's not saved. I save it. Now you can see that the e.detail contains the username A. If I click on this trash can, it contains the name B. Let me walk you through this again so you understand it. In the user item, I'm going to delete the user by clicking on this button. The delete user function is declared here. It says that it wants to dispatch, it wants to tell the upper component that you want to call the delete user function passing the argument user, which is an object. The upper component says if you want to call the delete user event, if you do that, I will run the function delete user. But you can see that it doesn't take any arguments. It doesn't take the user as the second argument. It doesn't do that because it's embedded in Svelte that as soon as you call this function delete user, which is that one, you will get an event emitter. And this detail for the event contains whatever you pass as the argument here. So once you have the detail, we have to filter the rate of users. I'm going to do that. I'm going to say that the rate of users equals the rate of users dot filter, and I want to delete whichever element was found when I click this delete user. So this is the JSON user object. And as you know, we have JSON objects inside the array of users. So we're going to filter, we're going to get each JSON object from the array as a user, and I'm going to just filter it by comparing them. If this user is the same as that user, the user coming from the array, I should filter it. I delete A, something is wrong here. If I click on B, B stays. If I click on A, B is deleted. So I have to take the reverse logic. Now I'm going to delete B, I'm going to delete A. So now, as you can see, my array doesn't have any users. I will add the user C, I will add user D, I will add user X, I will delete C, it's gone. You can see I only have D and X. I will delete D, and then I will delete X. So that's working fine. I reload the page. The last part of this tutorial, I want to show you how we can actually change this name A and the name B. Let's look at the user item. We have here an ID with, we have a name. This should be an input box. I'm going to just create here the input field. Input, type text, and I'm going to have the value, which the value will be the username. I will do that. I don't need the name in here anymore. Save it. So now we can see that the value is there. Here you have to consider something. This is a normal HTML value tag. It's not hooked to anything besides just displaying the user.name. If I want this to be reactive, I would like this data here to be hooked automatically to this name there. To do that, we say bind, and then we bind the value. Once we save it, if I make some changes here, you can see nothing really happens, nothing really changed. I'm trying to bind the value username. I do this, nothing changes up here because I need to update the data inside that array of users. So I am going to bind the value. I'm going to create here an event listener. I will say on input, and on input I will call the function update user. I don't have this function. Now I have a bug. Let's see what the terminal says. Nothing in the terminal. This is because I don't have this update user. Let's check it. I'm going to create a function update user, and it's not going to do anything. I just save it for now just to get rid of the bug. And when I update the user, I am going to dispatch again. I'm going to emit an update user call, and I'm going to pass the user again. But this user is already hooked to the system. So let me just update user. I will go here, and inside the user app, I will say on update user. I would like to run the function update user. This function doesn't exist. I'm going to create it here. There's a bug. I save it. The function doesn't exist, so I get this error: update user is not defined. Const update user is going to be a function. Remember about the e, that's the variable that I pass as the second argument. And what I will do here is I will say users equals users. Let me see if that works. A1, you can see that A1 has been changed. B2 is changed. I would say AXs, you can see how reactiveness takes place. And BFs, that is how it is working with reactive elements. So how is it? How is it that I don't need to pass the user here as the second argument? Well, you don't need to do that, because when you have changed the text box with some data, we know that whatever user you are applying the changes to has binded the value of the username inside that text box. So if I go and do A1 is now binded to this user, which is coming from the array that is up here. All right, guys, this is my first tutorial about it. You can create, you can obviously read because you can display them, you can update, and you can delete. I hope you guys like the video. I'm going to make more videos about the Svelte because there are many things that I want to cover. But just to get you started with it, I think this is good enough. Please remember to subscribe, like the video, give me some comments. I really need some input from you so I can continue working on it. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.